Hello to everyone watching and welcome to Construction Mastery. So in this video, we're going to have a look at materials on and off site, advanced payments including advanced payment bonds and also vesting certificates. Okay, great. So it looks like we are going to cover some interesting topics, but why do we actually need to know this information? This is important to know as contractors and clients want to know what safety and security they have if they want to order items in advance or what action to take in the event that materials are stored off-site. And there's no doubt that you will come across this regularly in your workplace from project to project. I've encountered this in every single project I think I've been on. So make sure you know these topics really well, really well. You should be able to summarize everything I've said in this video. Let's first start with what needs to be in place for you to include payments for materials on site. So the materials on site need to be delivered to program, adequately protected, proof that ownership will transfer to the employer on payment, and this is also known as a vesting certificate, which we're going to have a look at next, should be covered by insurance until the materials arrive at site. The material should be clearly labelled as for the site and set apart from other materials. A materials offsite bond has been provided if required, and we're going to have a look at what a materials offsite bond is. So can you see how you would need to know all of this information to advise your clients or your colleagues? This is information that commercial managers or project directors have at their fingertips. They just know it straight away. You need to have this at your fingertips too. So let's throw in a scenario to make things a little bit more interesting. So if a contractor applied for payment for a large quantity of materials on site, would you pay for this? I would make reasonable checks that the materials are on site required to progress the works. If they are there, then there is no reason not to pay, so I would. On one of my projects, the roofers had ordered all the materials for the next 3 months of work. I inspected the materials on site and I was happy when they were all required for the job, and when the next application came, I happily paid. And what about materials unfixed on site? So if the materials remain unfixed, but on the site, then who do they belong to? And this will depend on a few points. So number one, is the contract one for purely the sale of goods or one for goods and services? So if the contract is a sale of goods contract, has the employer or whoever has possession of the goods bought the goods in good faith? Number two, what does your contract say? For example, the JCT Design and Build contract provides that title for materials and goods passes when their value has been included in an interim payment for goods on site. So for goods off site, title in any listed items will pass once their value has been included in an interim payment. The NEC, in contrast, provides the title to pass on delivery to site rather than on payment. That's a key point. And under clause 70.1, title to off-site materials passes to the employer on the supervisor marking them as for this contract. Title to off-site materials will pass to the employer if they are marked by the supervisor, and the contractor identifies them for payment, and the contractor has prepared them for marking as the works information requires. Number three, is there a retention of title provision somewhere in the contract? And with that said, you may have heard of a retention for title clause. Let's have a look at what this is. So retention of title is where the subcontractor or supplier retains ownership of materials until they are paid for by the contractor. This is why vesting certificates are important. Otherwise, the employer may pay for materials that are not owned by the contractor. It can lead to disputes in the event of insolvency. And the general wisdom is materials that have been incorporated in the works belong to the employer, but less clear if they haven't. So in general, if the materials remain unfixed but on site, then provided that their value shall only be included if they are adequately protected against weather and other casualties and they are not on the works prematurely. This would also be dependent on the program too. And another thing is that materials off-site can also be paid through an advanced payment. So let's explore this a little bit. Advance payments are usually given to the main contractor for the procurement of items on long lead-in times. For example, a lift. Advance payments may be used as it allows the contractor to receive a lump sum payment in advance. They may be used where the contractor incurs high costs at the start of a project, for example, with long lead-in times or the need to purchase specialist plant for manufacturing. And please note that the public sector cannot make payments advances. That's a key point, an interesting view if you are working in the public sector. And of course, there are also some disadvantages to advance payments. They may reduce the incentive of the contractor. It could be bad for the employer's cash flow. There could be concerns over why the contractor can't fund the expenditure. Could there be some insolvency worries, for example? All right, my construction masters, we just had a look at advance payments. Let's now look at advance payment bonds. And advance payment bonds may also be used instead of advance payments. If the client agrees to make an advance payment to a supplier, a bond may be required to secure the payment against default by the contractor. This is referred to as an advance payment bond. An advance payment bond will normally be an on-demand bond, meaning that the bondsman pays the amount of money set out in the bond immediately on demand, without any preconditions having to be met. This is as opposed to a default bond, where the bondsman is only liable if it has been established that there has been a breach of contract. And in other words, there would have to be proof of a default. Okay, amazing guys. We will conclude this section by reviewing a vesting certificate. So when specific goods, plant or materials are in high demand or lead-in times are long, it may be necessary to make advance payments to secure an order and prevent delays to the program, even where the goods, plants or materials remain off-site, as we have just discussed. Paying to secure such items can be useful. However, it does put the client at a risk. For example, if the contractor becomes insolvent and the items are then not delivered, even though payment has been made. So remember that point. Under these circumstances, a vesting certificate or certificate of vesting may be required from the contractor or subcontractors or suppliers, certifying that ownership of the goods, plants or materials listed in the schedule will transfer from one party to the other upon payment, and confirming that they will be properly identified, separately stored, insured, and are free from encumbrances, such as retention of title. Vesting certificates can be used as evidence that ownership vests in the client upon payment, defeating third-party claims such as claims of retention of title, and can help to identify items if, for example, the contractor becomes insolvent before the items have been delivered to site. An advance payment bond, however, might offer better protection, with the value of the bond matching the value of the off-site items, its value reducing as deliveries to the site are made. Other mechanisms are also available to protect the client, for example, checking the financial status of the contractor to assess the likelihood of insolvency. And if the contractor is part of a larger group, then a parent company guarantee may be required from the holding company. Entering into a direct contract with the supplier. And in a perfect world, items would be delivered to site and affixed to the property before payment is made. But where this is not possible, a judgment is necessary to assess the risk to the project against the potential loss to the client. In a perfect world, quantity surveyors and construction professionals would have all of this knowledge at their fingertips, and there is no reason why you cannot. You should always strive to understand everything a little bit better. I would strongly advise that you spend 60 minutes a day learning your craft and your career. Write down 3 things that, if you did them, would change the game for you in your industry. One of them could be passing your RICS and becoming a chartered professional. One could be working under a superstar commercial manager that you've heard of, and that is the best in the industry. One could be picking up new skills like negotiation or leadership. There are endless routes to becoming the best professional you possibly can be, and you should always aim for this. And as I always say, the faster you learn, the faster you earn. So study hard, my friends. You'll never regret gaining new knowledge. Speak soon.